Welcome to Monk's Moon Temple. Let's begin with a question that has quietly haunted every human being who has ever lived. What is the purpose of this? What is the meaning of this strange journey from birth to death? Most people spend their entire lives avoiding this question. They fill their days with noise and activity precisely so they never have to sit quietly and face it. But the question remains, lurking just beneath the surface of every apparently happy moment. Today, we're exploring the life of a man who did not run from this question. He turned and faced it directly. This man is known to us as the Buddha. But before we go further, we need to understand something fundamental about who he was. The Buddha did not create Buddhism. This is a crucial distinction most people miss entirely. Buddhism as an organized religion grew up around his teachings long after he was gone. The Buddha himself was not a Buddhist. He was something far more radical. He was a freedom fighter fighting for the liberation of human consciousness itself from its self-imposed prisons. Before the Buddha appeared, religions were essentially transactional arrangements between humans and deities. You gave something to the gods, and in return, you expected something back. Protection, prosperity, good harvests. It was a cosmic business deal. Humanity was spiritually immature, relating to the divine the way a child relates to a parent, seeking rewards and fearing punishment. The Buddha introduced something entirely unprecedented. He introduced a spirituality that required no belief in any god, no adherence to any dogma, no submission to any external authority. He based everything on one thing only, direct personal experience. He said, "Do not believe anything because I have said it. Do not believe anything because it is written in ancient scriptures. Believe only what you yourself have verified through your own investigation of reality." This was a revolutionary stance. It remains revolutionary today. Most people still prefer the comfort of borrowed beliefs to the challenging work of direct investigation. It is easier to join a crowd and repeat what the crowd repeats than to stand alone and see for yourself. Other enlightened teachers before and after the Buddha compromised with their audiences. They diluted the truth to make it more palatable. The Buddha refused to do this. He spoke the truth exactly as he saw it, without concern for whether his listeners were ready to hear it. On the surface, this can appear harsh. But seen from a deeper perspective, it is the ultimate expression of compassion. If you have discovered a path out of suffering, what is the most compassionate thing you can do? Tell a comforting lie that leaves people still trapped, or tell a difficult truth that offers genuine liberation? The Buddha chose the second option. The entire teaching of the Buddha can be summarized in a single word. That word is freedom. Not political freedom, not economic freedom, but existential freedom. Freedom from the fundamental structures of suffering that have imprisoned human consciousness since the beginning of time. Most spiritual paths people encounter are not paths to freedom at all. They are paths to restriction. They tell you to control your desires, to discipline your thoughts, to regulate your behavior according to external standards. They create a war inside you between what you naturally are and what some authority tells you you should be. This war does not liberate you. It cripples you. It divides you against yourself. It makes you a slave to your own internal conflict. If you ever encounter someone who claims to be following the Buddha's path but is filled with judgment, constantly repressing their natural impulses, looking grim and burdened by their spirituality, you can be certain they have misunderstood. They have constructed a new prison for themselves and decorated it with Buddhist symbols, but it remains a prison. The Buddha's path is free from ideology. An ideology is a mental construction, a map of a territory you have never personally explored. All ideologies belong to the mind. And if they belong to the mind, how can they lead you beyond the mind? You cannot use thoughts to transcend thought. All ideologies must be discarded if you want to know what is real. The Buddha also rejected ideals. An ideal is a mental image of some future version of yourself that you are trying to become. I should be more patient. I should be more loving. I should be more enlightened. Every should creates a split in your consciousness. Right now you are impatient. But your mind holds an image of a patient person and judges you for not matching that image. This creates suffering. You are pulled between who you are and who you think you should be. When you lose trust in yourself, you become desperately dependent on others. You need someone to tell you who you are. You become vulnerable to anyone who offers a clear identity. Everyone wants to tell you who you are because you have forgotten how to discover it for yourself. The Buddha offers a different way. He does not give you a new identity to adopt. He does the opposite. He takes away everything you are clinging to. He takes away your ideals. He takes away your future projections. He takes away your comforting beliefs. He even takes away your sense of having a separate self. He keeps taking until there is nothing left to take. And what remains when all the taking is finished? What remains is pure, pristine emptiness. This emptiness the Buddha speaks of is what he called nirvana. Nirvana is not a destination you reach after death. It is not a reward for good behavior. Nirvana is simply what is left when you stop adding things to yourself. It is the space in the room that was always there but hidden behind the furniture. Remove the furniture, and the space is revealed. It did not go anywhere. It was always present, always waiting for you to notice it. If this idea resonates with you, if the possibility of such profound inner freedom feels like a breath of fresh air, then please take a moment to subscribe to Monk's Moon Temple. By subscribing, you are making a commitment to yourself to explore these depths. Join our community of seekers. Hit the subscribe button now. Now let's look at the man himself. How did Siddhartha Gautama, a prince surrounded by every conceivable luxury, come to this understanding of freedom and emptiness? His story is not just ancient history. It is a psychological case study in how human consciousness awakens from its comfortable slumber. When Siddhartha was born, so the story goes, astrologers predicted he would become either a great king or a great ascetic. His father, the king, terrified of losing his heir, did everything in his power to ensure the first prophecy came true. He created a perfect, artificial world for his son. 3 palaces were built, one for each season. Every unpleasant sight was banned from the palace grounds. No old people, no sick people, no dead people. The prince was surrounded by eternal youth and beauty. The gardeners were even ordered to remove any wilting flower before the prince could see it. On the surface, this seems like the perfect strategy to keep someone attached to the world. Give them everything so they never want to leave. But psychologically, it was a recipe for the opposite. It was a recipe for profound, existential boredom. Think about this from a modern psychological perspective. The human mind is a problem-solving mechanism. It needs challenges. It needs friction. It needs something to overcome, something to strive for. When you remove all friction, all problems, all challenges, the mind has nothing to do. And when the mind has nothing to do, it begins to question. It begins to ask, is this all there is? Siddhartha's life was a perfectly curated dream. But a dream, no matter how beautiful, eventually becomes monotonous. The same beautiful faces, the same beautiful gardens, the same beautiful music day after day. The mind started to feel the subtle boredom, the quiet desperation of a life without meaning. The astrologers and the king, in their foolishness, created the very conditions for his renunciation. They tried to shield him from reality, and in doing so, they made reality irresistible. Then one day, reality broke through. On the way to a festival, Siddhartha saw something he had never seen before. An old man, decrepit and bent, leaning on a stick, with wrinkles covering his face like cracks in dry earth. The shock of that moment was not just seeing age. It was the sudden, violent collision of his perfect dream with the real world. He asked his charioteer, "What is this?" The charioteer, bound by his own integrity, told him the truth. This is what happens to everyone. This is the law of life. Youth does not last. Beauty fades. The body decays. It happens to all of us, without exception. Then he saw a sick person, wasted by disease, moaning in pain. Then he saw a dead body, being carried to its cremation, with mourners weeping around it. The dream shattered. He saw the three fundamental facts of existence that no amount of palace luxury could protect him from: old age, sickness, and death. He saw the inevitability of suffering at the core of human life. And then he saw a fourth sight. A wandering ascetic, with shaven head and orange robe, carrying a begging bowl, walking with a look of profound peace on his face. A man who had renounced the world in search of something that does not decay, does not get sick, does not die. At that moment, a profound psychological shift occurred within Siddhartha. The boredom that had been growing in the palace transformed into a burning quest. The luxury that had once seemed desirable now appeared as a prison. The beautiful maidens who had once entertained him now seemed like distractions from the only question worth asking. How can one transcend this? How can one find freedom from old age, sickness, and death? That very night, he made his decision. He went to the room where his wife and newborn son lay sleeping. He looked at them with infinite love, and then he turned away. He knew that if he looked too long, his heart would break and he would stay. He walked out of the palace, out of his old life, out of everything he had known, and into the darkness of the unknown. He was 29 years old. This moment of renunciation is often misunderstood. People think Siddhartha abandoned his family because he was selfish, because he didn't care about them. Nothing could be further from the truth. He left precisely because he cared so deeply. He saw that his wife and son were caught in the same web of suffering as everyone else. They would grow old. They would get sick. They would die. And he had nothing to offer them that could protect them from this fate. So he went in search of something real, something that could actually help. He went not to escape the world, but to find a way to save it. Think about this in your own life. How often do you distract yourself from the fundamental questions? How often do you fill your days with small concerns precisely to avoid the large ones? The new phone, the promotion, the vacation, the relationship drama. All of these are just more furniture placed in the room to hide the empty space. Siddhartha had the courage to stop adding furniture. He had the courage to look directly at the empty space. And that courage changed the world. For 6 years after leaving the palace, Siddhartha threw himself into the opposite extreme of his former life. If the palace was a life of total indulgence, he would now live a life of total denial. He sought out the greatest spiritual teachers of his time. He mastered their techniques with such perfection that even his teachers grew jealous. But something was missing. He had achieved remarkable states of concentration and bliss, but he had not found freedom. He had simply exchanged one prison for another. He then turned to asceticism, the practice of extreme self-denial. He fasted for months at a time, sometimes eating only a single grain of rice per day. He became so emaciated that his spine could be seen through his belly, like a rope under a thin cloth. He grew so weak that he could not stand without support. He pushed his body to the absolute limit, believing that by tormenting the flesh he could liberate the spirit. But nothing happened. The suffering increased, but the answers did not come. He was no closer to understanding the nature of existence than he had been in the palace. The pendulum had simply swung from one extreme to the other. In the palace, the pendulum swung to the right, total indulgence. In the forest, the pendulum swung to the left, total denial. But a swinging pendulum is never still. It is constantly in motion, constantly moving from one point of tension to another. One day, near the Niranjana river, Siddhartha collapsed from weakness. He was so emaciated that he could not even cross the small stream. As he clung to a tree root, pulling himself out of the water, a thought struck him with the force of a thunderbolt. If I am too weak to cross this small river, how will I ever cross the vast ocean of suffering? This is not the way. At that moment, a memory arose in his mind. He remembered being a young boy, sitting under a rose apple tree while his father worked in the fields. He remembered how the afternoon passed, how he sat perfectly still, how a deep peace had settled over him. He had not been striving for anything in that moment. He had not been trying to achieve anything. He had simply been present, open, aware. And in that presence, something profound had touched him. He realized that the path was not in the extremes. It was not in indulgence, and it was not in denial. The path was somewhere in the middle, a path of balance, of awareness, of presence. A woman passing by saw his emaciated condition and offered him a bowl of rice milk. He accepted. For the first time in years, he ate properly. His strength returned. His 5 companions, fellow ascetics who had been practicing with him, saw him eating and were disgusted. They thought he had given up, that he had returned to the life of the senses. They abandoned him, walking away in disappointment. Siddhartha was now completely alone. That evening, he sat down under a large fig tree, later to be known as the Bodhi tree, the tree of awakening. He had done everything. He had lived a life of pleasure, and it had left him empty. He had lived a life of pain, and it had left him empty. He had mastered every spiritual technique available, and still he was empty. There was nowhere else to go, nothing else to try. All effort ceased. He did not sit down to meditate. He did not sit down to achieve enlightenment. He sat down because there was nothing left to do. He surrendered. He let go. He became like the tree itself, just present, just there, with no goal, no future, no desire. He made a silent vow. I will not rise from this spot until I have found the truth. But even that vow was not a striving. It was a statement of finality, a recognition that there was nowhere else to go. That night, for the first time in his life, he truly rested. The kind of rest that is not just sleep, but a profound relaxation of the very will to be. The effort to become something, to achieve something, to be someone, finally stopped. And in that stopping, something new could begin. Think about your own life. How much of your energy is consumed by striving? By trying to become something you are not? By trying to achieve some future state you imagine will bring happiness? The job, the relationship, the house, the enlightenment itself. All of it is striving. And all striving creates tension. All striving keeps the pendulum swinging. What would it be like to just stop? Not to give up, but to surrender. Not to become lazy, but to become present. What would it be like to sit under your own Bodhi tree and simply rest in what is? As Siddhartha sat under the Bodhi tree on that full moon night, something extraordinary began to unfold. With all striving ceased, with no goal to achieve, no future to reach for, his awareness became like a perfectly still lake. And in that stillness, he began to see clearly for the first time. The first thing he saw was his own mind. He saw how thoughts arose and passed away, arising and passing, like bubbles in a stream. He saw how each thought created a reaction, how each reaction created another thought, how the whole mind was a vast, interconnected web of cause and effect stretching back endlessly. He saw that there was no thinker behind the thoughts, only the thinking itself. The sense of a separate self, an I, who was thinking, was just another thought, another bubble in the stream. Then he saw deeper. He saw how this process of arising and passing was not limited to his mind. It was the nature of all existence. Everything, absolutely everything, arises and passes away. Mountains arise and pass away. Civilizations arise and pass away. Stars arise and pass away. Moments arise and pass away. There is nothing fixed, nothing permanent, nothing solid to hold on to anywhere in the entire universe. This is what the Buddha later called impermanence, or anicca. It is the first great insight into the nature of reality. Everything changes. Nothing remains the same. You cannot step into the same river twice because the river is constantly flowing, constantly changing. And you cannot step into the same life twice because you are constantly flowing, constantly changing as well. Most human suffering comes from resisting this simple truth. We want things to stay the same. We want the good moments to last forever. We want the people we love to never leave. We want our bodies to remain young and strong. But reality does not cooperate with our wanting. The good moments pass. The people leave. The body ages. And we suffer because we are fighting against the fundamental nature of existence. The Buddha saw this clearly. He saw that suffering, or dukkha, is not something that happens to us by accident. It is not a punishment or a mistake. It is a direct result of our attempts to cling to things that are by their very nature impermanent. It is like trying to hold on to water. The more you squeeze, the faster it runs through your fingers. The suffering is not in the water passing. The suffering is in the squeezing. Then he saw even deeper. He saw why we cling. We cling because we believe there is someone to cling, someone who needs things to be a certain way in order to be happy. This sense of someone, this sense of a separate self, is what the Buddha called anatta, or no self. This is perhaps the most challenging of all the Buddha's insights. It challenges everything we believe about ourselves. We all have a powerful, persistent feeling of I. We feel like there is a solid, continuous entity living inside our heads, the thinker of our thoughts, the feeler of our feelings. But when the Buddha looked directly for this I, he could not find it anywhere. He found thoughts, but no thinker behind the thoughts. He found sensations, but no feeler behind the sensations. He found memories, but no fixed entity that owned the memories. The I was like a mirage, appearing real from a distance but dissolving upon closer inspection. It was a label, a convention, a useful way of speaking, but not an ultimate reality. Think of a flame. A flame seems to be a continuous thing. But if you look closely, it is a process. It is a series of moments of combustion, fuel being consumed, one after the other. The flame of this moment is not the flame of the next moment. There is continuity, but no fixed entity. Our sense of self is exactly like that. It is a process, a flow, a river of moments. There is continuity, but no fixed, permanent self. When the Buddha saw this, when he directly experienced the truth of no self, something miraculous happened. The last barrier to freedom dissolved. If there is no self, then who is it that suffers? Who is it that clings? Who is it that fears death? The questions themselves became meaningless. The suffering was seen through. The clinging was seen through. The fear was seen through. As the morning star rose in the eastern sky, Siddhartha Gautama, the prince who had become an ascetic, became the Buddha, the awakened one. He had not become someone new. He had simply woken up to what had always been true. The dream of separation was over. The reality of interconnectedness, of oneness, of emptiness, was all that remained. He sat there for several days, not moving, simply resting in this awakened state. Later, when asked what he had attained, he gave a famous reply. He said, "I have not attained anything. I have simply realized what has always been true. I am not enlightened. I am just awake." After his awakening, the Buddha sat beneath the Bodhi tree for several weeks, simply resting in the profound peace of his realization. He had found what he had been seeking. The door to freedom had opened. But then a new question arose. Should he teach what he had discovered? Should he try to share this with others? The initial response from his awakened mind was no. He saw clearly that what he had realized was so deep, so subtle, so contrary to ordinary ways of thinking, that most people would not understand it. They would hear his words but interpret them through their old patterns. They would turn his teaching into another belief system, another prison. They would worship him instead of waking up themselves. The temptation to remain silent, to simply enjoy his freedom alone in the forest, was strong. The ancient texts describe this moment with beautiful poetry. They say the Buddha looked out at the world and saw beings who were like lotuses at different stages. Some were still deep underwater, completely submerged in suffering, not even aware that light existed. Others were just below the surface, struggling to break through. And some had already broken the surface and were reaching toward the sun, needing only a little guidance to bloom completely. He saw that while many would not understand, some would. A few would hear his words and something would click, something would resonate, and they would be able to follow the path themselves. And for the sake of those few, for the lotuses just below the surface reaching for the light, it was worth speaking. Compassion won over the temptation to remain silent. This is a crucial point about the Buddha's teaching. Enlightenment did not make him cold and distant. It did not make him indifferent to suffering. On the contrary, it made compassion natural, effortless, inevitable. When you see that all beings are not separate from you, when you see that their suffering is your suffering, their liberation your liberation, how can you not help? How can you not reach out? The Buddha walked to the deer park at Sarnath, where his 5 former companions, the ascetics who had abandoned him, were still living. When they saw him approaching, they were conflicted. They had judged him as a failure for accepting food and giving up ascetic practices. But something about his presence was different now. There was a radiance, a peace, a gravity that had not been there before. They found themselves rising to greet him, preparing a seat, bringing water for his feet. The Buddha began to speak. He did not present himself as a god or a prophet. He did not claim to have received revelation from any divine source. He simply said, "I have found an ancient path, a path to freedom that has been walked by many before me. I have walked it to the end. And now I am here to show it to you, if you are willing to see." Then he gave what became known as his first sermon, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, which means setting in motion the wheel of truth. In this teaching, he laid out the foundation of everything that would follow. He introduced the middle way, the path between indulgence and denial. He introduced the 4 noble truths, the diagnosis and prescription for human suffering. And he introduced the 8-fold path, the practical steps for walking from suffering to freedom. The 5 ascetics listened. And as they listened, something shifted in them. They saw what he was pointing to. One by one, they too awakened. The Sangha, the community of those who have seen, was born. The wheel had been set in motion, and it has been turning ever since. Think about this moment. The Buddha could have stayed silent. He could have enjoyed his liberation alone. But he didn't. He shared. He taught. He walked for 45 years, through villages and cities, in heat and rain, speaking to anyone who would listen. He didn't do this because it was his duty. He did it because compassion is the natural expression of freedom. When you are free, you cannot help but want others to be free as well. Your own joy naturally overflows. This is the test of any genuine spiritual realization. Does it make you more compassionate or more indifferent? Does it open your heart or close it? Does it connect you more deeply to others or separate you? The Buddha's enlightenment passed this test completely. His freedom flowered into compassion, and that compassion has been transforming human consciousness for more than 2,000 years. After his awakening, the Buddha sat beneath the Bodhi tree for several weeks, simply resting in the profound peace of his realization. He had found what he had been seeking. The door to freedom had opened. But then a new question arose. Should he teach what he had discovered? Should he try to share this with others? The initial response from his awakened mind was no. He saw clearly that what he had realized was so deep, so subtle, so contrary to ordinary ways of thinking, that most people would not understand it. They would hear his words but interpret them through their old patterns. They would turn his teaching into another belief system, another prison. They would worship him instead of waking up themselves. The temptation to remain silent, to simply enjoy his freedom alone in the forest, was strong. The ancient texts describe this moment with beautiful poetry. They say the Buddha looked out at the world and saw beings who were like lotuses at different stages. Some were still deep underwater, completely submerged in suffering, not even aware that light existed. Others were just below the surface, struggling to break through. And some had already broken the surface and were reaching toward the sun, needing only a little guidance to bloom completely. He saw that while many would not understand, some would. A few would hear his words and something would click, something would resonate, and they would be able to follow the path themselves. And for the sake of those few, for the lotuses just below the surface reaching for the light, it was worth speaking. Compassion won over the temptation to remain silent. This is a crucial point about the Buddha's teaching. Enlightenment did not make him cold and distant. It did not make him indifferent to suffering. On the contrary, it made compassion natural, effortless, inevitable. When you see that all beings are not separate from you, when you see that their suffering is your suffering, their liberation your liberation, how can you not help? How can you not reach out? Let me share a story that illustrates this. Imagine a man who has been trapped in a dark cave his entire life. He has never seen the sun. He doesn't even know the sun exists. One day, he finds a narrow passage and crawls through it, emerging into the bright sunlight. The experience is overwhelming. The warmth, the light, the vastness of the sky. He is transformed. Now, what does he do? Does he sit there alone, enjoying the sun, and forget about the others still trapped in the cave? Perhaps for a moment. But soon, the memory of those still in darkness arises. He knows they are suffering. He knows they don't even know there is a way out. So he goes back into the cave. He doesn't go back because he has to. He goes back because his own joy naturally wants to share itself. He goes back to show others the passage, to guide them toward the light. This is exactly what the Buddha did. He went back into the cave of human suffering to show others the way out. Not because anyone asked him to. Not because it was his duty. But because compassion is what freedom feels like when it meets suffering. The Buddha walked to the deer park at Sarnath, where his 5 former companions, the ascetics who had abandoned him, were still living. When they saw him approaching, they were conflicted. They had judged him as a failure for accepting food and giving up ascetic practices. But something about his presence was different now. There was a radiance, a peace, a gravity that had not been there before. They found themselves rising to greet him, preparing a seat, bringing water for his feet. The Buddha began to speak. He did not present himself as a god or a prophet. He did not claim to have received revelation from any divine source. He simply said, "I have found an ancient path, a path to freedom that has been walked by many before me. I have walked it to the end. And now I am here to show it to you, if you are willing to see." Then he gave what became known as his first sermon. In this teaching, he laid out the foundation of everything that would follow. He introduced the middle way, the path between indulgence and denial. He introduced the 4 noble truths, the diagnosis and prescription for human suffering. And he introduced the 8-fold path, the practical steps for walking from suffering to freedom. The 5 ascetics listened. And as they listened, something shifted in them. They saw what he was pointing to. One by one, they too awakened. The Sangha, the community of those who have seen, was born. The wheel had been set in motion, and it has been turning ever since. Think about this moment. The Buddha could have stayed silent. He could have enjoyed his liberation alone. But he didn't. He shared. He taught. He walked for 45 years, through villages and cities, in heat and rain, speaking to anyone who would listen. He didn't do this because it was his duty. He did it because compassion is the natural expression of freedom. When you are free, you cannot help but want others to be free as well. Your own joy naturally overflows. This is the test of any genuine spiritual realization. Does it make you more compassionate or more indifferent? Does it open your heart or close it? Does it connect you more deeply to others or separate you? The Buddha's enlightenment passed this test completely. His freedom flowered into compassion, and that compassion has been transforming human consciousness for more than 2,000 years. Let us now explore the heart of the Buddha's practical teaching, the method he offered for waking up from the dream of separation. This method is called vipassana, which means seeing clearly or insight meditation. It is the Buddha's greatest gift to humanity, a technology of liberation that requires no belief, no ritual, no external authority. Only your own honest attention. Before the Buddha, meditation was generally understood as something you did for a period each day. You sat in a special posture, you repeated a mantra, you concentrated on an object, and then you went back to your ordinary life. Meditation was separate from life, a compartment, a practice. The Buddha changed this completely. He said that meditation cannot be something you do for an hour in the morning and then forget for the rest of the day. It must become as continuous as breathing. You breathe all day, every day, even in your sleep. Meditation must become like that, a constant background awareness, an unwavering attention to whatever is arising in each moment. Think about your own experience. You breathe continuously, but are you aware of your breathing? Most of the time, no. The breathing happens automatically, beneath the level of your conscious attention. The Buddha said that meditation must move from the automatic to the conscious. You must become aware of your breathing, aware of your walking, aware of your eating, aware of your thinking. Not just sometimes, but as much as possible, moment to moment. This is what vipassana is. It is not a technique for achieving special states of consciousness. It is not about having visions or blissful experiences. It is simply the practice of seeing clearly what is actually happening, right now, in this moment, without adding anything, without subtracting anything, without judging anything. The Buddha broke this practice into 3 stages, each one leading naturally to the next. The first stage is witnessing the body. This is the easiest place to start because the body is always with you, always in the present moment. Your breath is happening now. The sensations in your feet as they touch the ground are happening now. The feeling of air on your skin is happening now. By bringing your attention to these physical sensations, you anchor yourself in the present. You stop living in memories of the past and fantasies about the future. You come home to the only moment that actually exists, this one. Try it right now, wherever you are. Just bring your attention to your breath. Don't change it, don't control it, just feel it. The air entering your nostrils, cool on the way in. The air leaving, warm on the way out. Notice how the mind wants to wander. Notice how thoughts pull at your attention like children tugging at your sleeve. Each time you notice you have wandered, simply come back to the breath. No judgment, no frustration. Just gently, patiently, returning. This is the foundation of everything. The second stage is witnessing the mind. Once you have some stability in watching the body, you can begin to watch your thoughts. This is more subtle because thoughts are not physical. They are like clouds passing through the sky of your awareness. Some are dark and stormy, thoughts of anger or fear. Some are light and fluffy, thoughts of pleasure or hope. Some are barely there at all, just wisps of mental activity. The key is to watch them without getting involved. Do not chase after the interesting thoughts. Do not push away the unpleasant ones. Do not judge yourself for having thoughts at all. Just watch them come and watch them go, like a person sitting on a riverbank watching the water flow past. You are not the river. You are the one watching the river. Here is a modern example. Imagine you are stuck in traffic. The old pattern would be to get lost in thoughts of frustration. This traffic is ridiculous. I'm going to be late. Why does this always happen to me? These thoughts grab you, and soon you are not just thinking about frustration, you are frustration. Your body tenses, your jaw clenches, your blood pressure rises. You have become the thought. The Vipassana approach is different. You notice the thought arise. Ah, there is frustration. You notice the physical sensations that accompany it, the tightness in the chest, the heat in the face. You notice the thought passing, and then you notice the next thought arising. You stay in the seat of the witness, watching the parade go by. You are still sitting in traffic, but you are no longer trapped by it. The external situation hasn't changed, but your internal relationship to it has transformed completely. The third stage is witnessing your emotions and moods. This is the deepest level of the practice. Emotions are even more subtle than thoughts, more powerful, more capable of possessing you. When sadness comes, it doesn't just knock on the door. It moves in and takes over the whole house. You become sadness. Every cell of your body seems to vibrate with it. But with practice, you can learn to witness sadness the same way you witness thoughts. Sadness arises. You notice it. You feel its texture, its weight, its location in the body. And then you notice it passing. It always passes. Everything passes. Emotions are visitors, not permanent residents. They come and they go, but you remain. When your witnessing becomes stable, when you can watch body, mind, and heart with equal ease, something remarkable happens. The fourth stage unfolds on its own. Your awareness, which has been directed outward at the objects of experience, suddenly turns inward. It takes a quantum leap and lands on its own source. You see what you have always been, the pure, formless, witnessing consciousness itself. The witness is seen, and the separation between witness and witness dissolves. There is only awareness, only presence, only this. This is enlightenment. This is freedom. This is what the Buddha discovered under the Bodhi tree. And it is available to you, right now, in this very moment. Not somewhere else, not some other time. Right here. Right now. Now we arrive at one of the most misunderstood concepts in all of Buddhism. Emptiness. Sunyata. When people hear this word, they often think of nothingness, of void, of nihilism. They imagine the Buddha's teaching leads to a kind of spiritual suicide, an annihilation of everything worthwhile. Nothing could be further from the truth. Emptiness is not the absence of things. It is the absence of permanent, independent existence in things. Everything you see, everything you touch, everything you call yourself, is empty of fixed, solid, separate identity. But this emptiness is not a blank. It is a fullness. It is the recognition that everything is interconnected, that nothing stands alone, that the whole universe is present in every single part. Think of a wave in the ocean. The wave has a form. You can see it, you can measure it, you can ride it. But is the wave separate from the ocean? Of course not. The wave is nothing but ocean, dancing for a moment in a particular shape. It arises from the ocean, it lives its brief life as a wave, and then it subsides back into the ocean. Its wave nature is temporary. Its ocean nature is eternal. You are exactly like that wave. You have a form, a personality, a history. You appear as a separate individual moving through life. But your separate self is just a wave on the ocean of consciousness. It arises, it dances for a while, and then it subsides. Your true nature is not the wave. Your true nature is the ocean. And the ocean is vast, infinite, eternally present. The Buddha's teaching of emptiness is an invitation to stop identifying with the wave and start recognizing yourself as the ocean. It is not a denial of your relative existence. You are here, you are reading these words, you have a life to live. That is all real at the relative level. But at the ultimate level, you are so much more. You are everything. You are the entire universe experiencing itself through this temporary form called you. When you really understand emptiness, something shifts in how you relate to life. You stop clinging so desperately to things because you see they are just waves, appearing and disappearing. You stop pushing so hard against difficulties because you see they too are waves, arising and passing. You stop taking your thoughts and emotions so personally because you see they are just weather patterns in the vast sky of your awareness. Let me tell you a story that illustrates this. There was once a woman who lived in constant fear of death. She was terrified of losing her body, her identity, everything she knew. This fear poisoned her life, made her anxious and small. She went to see a wise teacher and explained her problem. The teacher said, "Show me this self you are so afraid of losing." The woman said, "It is me. I am sitting here talking to you." The teacher said, "Yes, but who is this I? Is it your body?" The woman considered. "Well, partly. But I am more than my body." "Is it your thoughts?" The woman considered again. "I have thoughts, but I am not my thoughts. I am the one who watches my thoughts." "Is it your emotions?" "No, I watch those too." The teacher smiled. "So you have discovered something. The one who watches, the awareness itself, has it ever been born? Will it ever die?" The woman sat in silence. She looked deeply into her own experience. She saw that the body would indeed die. The thoughts would cease. The emotions would dissolve. But the awareness in which all of this appeared, the simple fact of being conscious, had she ever found a beginning to that? Had she ever found an edge to that? The teacher continued. The wave is born and the wave dies. But does the ocean die? The wave's birth and death are just the ocean dancing. You have been identifying with the dance and forgetting the dancer. Identify with the dancer, and death loses its sting. The dancer was never born and will never die. The dancer is just dancing through this character for a while. The woman wept, but not from sadness. Tears of relief, of recognition, of coming home. She had been searching for safety her whole life, trying to protect something that was never really threatened. The wave cannot protect itself from dissolving. But the ocean needs no protection. It has always been here and will always be here. This is the freedom of emptiness. It is not a freedom from life. It is a freedom in life. You still feel joy, but you don't cling to it. You still feel sorrow, but you don't resist it. You still engage with the world, but you are not trapped by it. The wave still dances, but it knows it is ocean. And that knowledge changes everything. When you live from this understanding, your relationships transform. You stop trying to possess people because you see they are also waves, also ocean. You stop trying to control outcomes because you see outcomes are just waves arising and passing. You stop measuring yourself against others because you see the separation was always an illusion. There is only one ocean, dancing in countless forms. This is what the Buddha pointed to when he spoke of emptiness. Not a bleak void, but a radiant fullness. Not the end of everything, but the beginning of real living. Not nothingness, but the death of the illusion that you were ever a separate something. Now we must address something that naturally arises from the understanding of emptiness. If there is no separate self, if the wave is really ocean, then what about compassion? Why help others if they are not really separate from you? Why care about suffering if it is all just a dream? These questions arise from a misunderstanding. Compassion is not something you decide to do because it is morally correct. Compassion is not a duty or an obligation. Compassion is what naturally arises when the illusion of separation dissolves. It is not that you should love others. It is that you cannot help but love others once you see they are not other. Imagine you are dreaming at night. In the dream, you see yourself and you see other people. There is a sense of separation. You might feel afraid of them, or you might try to help them, but there is still a sense of two separate entities. Then you wake up. In the moment of waking, you realize that all the people in the dream were you. They were all projections of your own mind. There was never anyone else there at all. Now, does waking up make you care less about the dream figures? No. In fact, it makes your care more complete. When you were dreaming, you might have helped someone in the dream out of a sense of duty or pity. But after waking, if you remember the dream, you feel a different quality of compassion. You see that the suffering figure in the dream was you. Helping them was helping yourself. The separation was never real. This is the Buddha's understanding of compassion. When you awaken from the dream of separation, you see that all beings are you. Their suffering is your suffering. Their liberation is your liberation. Helping them is not an act of charity. It is an act of self-recognition. You are not being kind to another. You are being kind to yourself appearing in another form. This is why the Buddha's enlightenment naturally flowered into 45 years of teaching. He didn't teach because he had to. He taught because he couldn't not teach. His realization overflowed into action the way a flower naturally releases its fragrance into the air. The fragrance doesn't try to spread. It just spreads because that is its nature. Let me tell you a story about this. There was once a man who fell into a deep pit. He cried out for help, and after some time, a traveler came by and looked down. The traveler said, "I cannot come down there, but I can throw you a rope." And he did. The man climbed out and was saved. Years later, that same man was walking and saw another person who had fallen into a pit. Without hesitation, he found a rope and threw it down. Someone watching asked him, "Why did you do that? You don't even know that person." The man replied, "I know what it is like to be in that pit. I know the despair, the fear, the hopelessness. When I see someone else in that same situation, helping is not a choice. It is the only possible response. This is compassion born of shared experience." The Buddha's compassion is like that, but infinitely expanded. He saw that all beings are in the same pit. The pit of birth, aging, sickness, and death. The pit of clinging and suffering. The pit of identifying with the wave and forgetting the ocean. And he had found the rope. He had found the way out. How could he not share it? In the Buddhist tradition, this is called the bodhisattva ideal. A bodhisattva is one who has awakened to their true nature but chooses to remain engaged with the world to help all beings awaken as well. They see that their own liberation is incomplete until all are liberated. Not because they are obliged, but because in a deep sense, there is only one being here. We are all fingers on the same hand, waves in the same ocean. You can taste this for yourself right now. Think of someone you love deeply. Notice how their joy makes you happy and their pain makes you sad. The boundary between you and them is porous. Their experience affects your experience. Now imagine extending that to all beings. Not as an intellectual concept, but as a felt reality. This is what becomes natural when the illusion of separation dissolves. The Buddha did not teach compassion as a commandment. He taught it as a description of how an awakened being naturally functions. When you see clearly, you cannot harm another because you see yourself in them. You cannot ignore another's suffering because you feel it as your own. You cannot help but reach out, share, guide, support. Not because you should, but because you must. It is your nature. This is the beauty of the Buddha's path. It does not impose foreign qualities on you. It simply removes the obstacles to what you already are. You already have compassion. It is your natural state. But it is covered over by the illusion of separation, by fear, by clinging. Remove those, and compassion shines forth on its own, like the sun appearing from behind the clouds. We come now to the final teaching of the Buddha, his last words spoken as he lay dying at the age of 80. After 45 years of teaching, after guiding countless beings to freedom, what were his final instructions? His last words were simple and profound. He said, "Be a light unto yourself. Do not seek refuge in anyone else. Rely on yourself. Hold fast to the truth as your island and your refuge. Look not for shelter in anything besides yourself. Think about the weight of these words. Here is a man who achieved the highest possible realization. He has thousands of followers who revere him as their master. And in his final moment, he tells them not to depend on him. He tells them not to make him into a crutch. He tells them that the only real authority is their own direct experience. A real teacher does not create followers. A real teacher creates other real teachers. A real teacher does not want you to depend on them. Their whole effort is to make you independent, to throw you back on your own resources. They want you to stand on your own 2 feet, to see with your own eyes. A false teacher creates dependency. They want you to need them. They want you to come to them for answers, for validation. They make you a shadow. A false teacher gives you a map and tells you to follow it blindly. A true teacher says, forget the map. Look at the territory for yourself. The Buddha's last words are a declaration of your own sovereignty. You are not here to be a Buddhist. You are here to be a Buddha, an awakened one. The potential for awakening belongs to you, right now, in this moment. You have everything you need. The truth is not somewhere else. It is not in a book, not in a temple. It is here, in this breath, in this awareness. The path is not something you have to build. It is something you have to uncover. It was always there, hidden beneath the clutter of your conditioning. So as we conclude, take these words with you. Be a light unto yourself. Trust your own experience. Question everything. Test it in the laboratory of your own life. See for yourself what is true. The invitation is always open. The freedom is always here, waiting for you to notice it. Right here. Right now. In this very breath. Walk on.